All right, so looking at the VJ Edgecombe commitment once again. Sorry. This is maybe the most important recruiting get that Baylor has ever had in basketball. He is the second highest rated recruit they've ever gotten behind Isaiah Austin. And I think it is the birth of something really great for two reasons. First off, we have a really great thing going. I don't want to say that, is the Messiah. He's going to save us all. He's going to do really well for us, VJ Edgecombe from Long Island. But we're in a pretty good situation right now. The two things that really stick out to me about what makes this so great is first is the obvious. He had the option of anywhere in the country, but the three that he had on the podium were Baylor, Duke, and Kentucky. Okay, that's what? 14 national championships between the other two schools up there. Duke and Kentucky are like the two programs you think of when you think of college basketball, maybe of all time. And yet Baylor, scrubby little Baylor, beat them out. Baylor with their one national championship and their one Final Four in almost 75 years here. But it's because he realizes they're still building something. They are one of the premier basketball programs in the country right now, and they're still building. And he sees we know about the Duke lottery picks. We know about the Kentucky lottery picks, but a lot of people outside the viewership of this podcast don't know about Baylor's success with the lottery picks in the last few years, especially at the guard position. I mean, Davion Mitchell wasn't getting a shout of playing time at Auburn. He comes here, he wins a national championship, and he is a top 10 pick. Who's it? Keontae George, who is more like a VJ Edgecombe example. He's a 4 or 5 star, depending on what outlet you look at. He comes here, plays here for a year, really honed some skills. He was already a knockdown shooter, but definitely honed some skills that helped him in the NBA. He's just outside the lottery, I think. What was he, 16 this year? And lo and behold, he's been one of the best rookies in the NBA this year. Instant impact for the Utah Jazz. So that's the first thing, was just picking Duke over Kentucky, or Duke and Kentucky over Duke and Kentucky. Can I talk today just one time? Can I get a sentence out? Picking Baylor over Duke and Kentucky is a humongous win for this program. It just is. You have one of the very best players in the nation, a guy who can go anywhere he wants and is only going to play there for a year because the next year he's going to be in the NBA. Chose Baylor over Duke and over Kentucky. And I'm going to talk about Duke a little bit more because of the second reason why I really love this commitment outside of just how great a player he is. Because it reminds me, my older listeners will really appreciate this, those who were around in 1985, 86. It reminds me of when Duke landed Danny Ferry. And that name might not resonate with a lot of you guys, but he was a humongous high school recruit, like a top 10 guy, a lot like VJ Edgecombe. And he was the apple of Dean Smith's eye at North Carolina. And that's basically what it came down to, Carolina and Duke. And this is Duke very early in the Krzyzewski days. They were hanging him in effigy on the campus. They wanted him canned. No, they wanted no part of this. Krzyzewski was on borrowed time, and he convinced Danny Ferry to go to Duke over North Carolina. It was the first time really ever, but especially in the Krzyzewski era, that they beat Carolina and Dean Smith to a recruit. Okay. Now, first off, the winning followed. He went to 2 Final Fours there at Duke. And you might not remember Danny Ferry, but without Danny Ferry, there's no Christian Laettner. There's no Bobby Hurley. There's no Grant Hill. There's no, name your guy. There's no Elton Brand. There's no Shane Battier. Eventually, there's no J.J. Redick. There's no Kyrie Irving. That's what set in motion. That one recruiting win set in motion, taking a small private school that had a little bit of basketball success before then, had made some Final Fours a decade before, and turned them eventually into the premier college basketball program of the last 35 years. Danny Ferry started that. And you might not remember the name, but I bet you Dean Smith remembered that name till the day he died. The one that got away, the one that evened the playing field between North Carolina and Duke. Baylor might have just had that with VJ Edgecombe. I know they've had some big recruits before. Keontae George was a big recruit. By the way, the other two guys that are coming in with them straight out of high school are also pretty damn good recruits. And Jason Asamoah and Rob Wright. You have a couple great recruits this year in Jacoby Walter and Eve Misi. But this is the watershed moment in terms of recruiting to beat out Duke and Kentucky. That is our Dean Smith. That is our beating North Carolina to a recruit, beating those two true blue bloods. That's how you make that next step. Blue bloods are not something that are typically like crafted. They just are. They're there. In fact, I talk about Duke being the premier program. They might be the only true blue blood that we've seen develop in the last 50 years. Before that, it was just always there. Indiana was always there. Kentucky was always there. Kansas, North Carolina, UCLA, they were always there. We are witnessing one being built right in front of our eyes, which is fascinating. It's stunning. It's exciting as hell. And maybe I'm overplaying this, but to me, VJ Edgecombe can have that kind of effect on this program, which is already, by the way, trending better than the way Duke was when they got Danny Ferry. But this could really open the door. And when, not if, but when VJ Edgecombe succeeds at Baylor and becomes a lottery pick and they win a ton of games and they win the national championship, that is going to open the door to a new era in the way that recruits perceive this program. It has already started, but they're going to say, man, you know, VJ went there over Duke and Kentucky, and we all laughed at him, and he was the one cutting down the nets and being selected with the 6th overall pick in the draft. So should we have been laughing? You know, because Kentucky and Duke, they weren't in the Final Four. Baylor was. That's what's going to happen here.